Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is Season 5, Episode 23. Austin, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 4-0 for the first time since 1979. That is a very long time. They were, and as a matter of fact, every other NFL team had started 4-0 more recently than the Steelers had. It's hard to believe that given all the success that they've had, even between their fourth Super Bowl championship and where they're at now, that they had not started 4-0 since then.
Yeah, pretty wild. The Steelers broke a few long-standing bad records this game, didn't they?
As a matter of fact, they did. So they finally breached the 30-point barrier today, this week, for the first time since the Panthers game back in 2018. So you're talking well over a season. I know that a lot of that had to do with the quarterback play from last season, but definitely a step in the right direction. So generally, your feeling about this team right now through 4 weeks is good, right?
Yeah, I feel good. I wish we got to play the Titans, not for the reason people probably think, but I want to say that the Steelers played a really good team and won, because a lot of people still are doubting the Steelers because of who they played, and that's fair in some regards, but the Steelers can only play who's in front of them. But I really think that the Steelers would be playing the same against really good teams. And I try to explain that to people, and they don't get it. They're like, nah, the Steelers only won by this amount against this team. And it's just and I'm like, nah, you don't understand. The Steelers just play down to all their opponents. It doesn't really matter. And then they play the same against higher tier opponents for the most part.
Well, they'll get a taste of a good opponent next week.
Yeah. No, this is exciting. The Browns are competitive for the first time in, I don't know, feels like my conscious life, but it's really 2010, 2008 that they were
2000. Well, they fielded a competitive team for the most part of the 2014 season. They finished 7-9 that year. They only fell off late in the year, but early on they were pretty good. And in 2007 they had a 10-win team. 2002 they had a 9-win team that made the playoffs. That's about it. I have some pretty depressing stats. I'm going to try to get John on the show later in the week to talk about the Browns. I have some pretty depressing stats to share regarding the Browns and the Steelers.
I can bet they're not very impressive. I mean, it just took forever for the Browns to finally have a actual winning quarterback at their own stadium. I mean, now Baker Mayfield is tied for most wins in a start at the Browns stadium with Ben Roethlisberger, which it took a very long time for that to happen.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about Ben's dominance at the Ohio stadiums, the Bengals and Browns. When he plays at Paul Brown Stadium next season, assuming he plays there this year, I mean, I guess he didn't technically play there last year, but assuming he doesn't retire this year, which I don't think he will, next year when he goes to Paul Brown Stadium, it'll be his 20th game at Paul Brown Stadium, and I know he didn't play in one, but if you include the playoffs, it'll be 20 games at Paul Brown Stadium, which is a full regular season and a full preseason.
That's wild, man. It really is wild.
I'll give you an idea of how many times he's played there. But let's kind of circle back. We'll have plenty of time to talk about the Bengals and Browns later on. So the Philadelphia Eagles came into this game leading their division at 1-2-1. They've had a lot of issues, but they made a good fight out of it. They did a lot of things well at times, and the Steelers didn't do some things well too. So I guess, a win is a win. You can't be 5-0 in 4 games. So I still feel generally really good about where this team is, because I think the way it goes right now, I think it's really a no-win scenario for Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, because right now we're hearing, they haven't played anybody. Meanwhile, if they lost one of these games, it's a typical Mike Tomlin loss to a team they should have beaten.
Yeah, there's really no winning at the moment. You can really only play who's in front of you. It would have been nice to play the Titans when we did, like I said, but I mean, you could just say it again, is you can only play who's in front of you.
So there's a kind of a tale of two different units, and I think that we should start with the offense because I think that because of how well they played and the fact that they won, I think it'd be better to start with the good that we saw from them on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So the good news is they outscored Philadelphia in every single quarter of competition except for the first. They both scored a touchdown. You know, all in all, the team did a good job moving the ball. They finished with 367 yards of offense. They were averaging 5.5 yards per play. They had 25 first downs. They did it on the ground and through the air. They only had one turnover, which I really think was closer to a drop, but you know, whatever. They were 3 for 3 in the red zone. They won the time of possession battle. Only gave up one sack. There was a lot to like. 11 for 15 on third downs. It wasn't as easy as the stats make it look, but all you really need to know is the 38 points.
Yeah, man, it's been a very long time for that since, like you said in the beginning, it was a really, really good display from the offense, I felt like. And even against adversity, I mean, losing Deontay Johnson this game and losing David DeCastro again, both of them again, I guess, technically, since DeCastro didn't start the year, they played really well. And I would like to point out Kevin Dotson's play against Fletcher Cox. I mean, he did get 2 holding calls, which were the first holding calls in the Steelers all year, which was interesting. But other than those calls, I thought he was holding his own against Fletcher Cox really well for not being expected to be starting in this game, or playing in this game, I should say. But, yeah, so I thought that overall the offense did really well.
All right, well, let's start with the quarterback then. So, Ben, not a overly dominant game by any stretch of the imagination when you look at the stats overall, but I think when you dive deeper into the numbers and you just watch the way he played, he really did seem like a field general now. And I think we've seen a full evolution for him at quarterback where he's no longer the physically, he's still a physically talented player, but he's not only using his brute strength and overall talent to will his team to victory, he's being a lot more smarter about it. And that's evidenced by the fact that he has only one turnover through a quarter of the season, and he's making the right calls, he's making the right reads, he's making the right throws. I could think of only one pass where I thought, oh, that's a dangerous throw on Sunday, and that was the kind of wobbler to Eric Ebron where he got hit as he threw. Other than that, I thought he did a great job of keeping the ball out of harm's way.
Yeah, he's playing very efficiently. This is one of his most efficient starts in his career. I believe by his quarterback rating, it is actually his best start to his one of the seasons that he's had. So yeah.
Yes, it is.
So he's being very efficient with the ball. We're not seeing as many turnovers. I think that's partially because the deep ball isn't being tested as much because that deep ball hasn't been working out. So far, it's where his game is weak at the moment. But honestly, I don't mind it. With what he's doing, it's working. And the Steelers, the way they played this game, they didn't even really attack the deep ball very much. The Steelers were attacking their linebacker core by taking underneath routes and trying to make them cover it. Like, it felt like all this game was dink and dunk offense the entire way, but it was working. I have no complaints about that. If it's working and you're attacking the right things that you should be, I am more than happy with that. And Ben was really good in this game. On third down, he didn't have an incompletion. He was 3rd for 13 on when he threw. So
they had to. They had to because of that defensive line. He was getting that ball out quick because he knew he had to.
Yeah. So they were playing smart in this game, and I'm happy with that. And I think overall it was really good. He's having really good accuracy this year, I feel like, in terms of like his completion percentage. Overall, I'm happy with the play.
Yeah, so I think, he's still missing on the deep ball right now, and I think that there will come a time where he's going to have to start hitting some of those. But until the defense starts forcing the issue, I am perfectly okay with him playing the way that he's playing because it's as efficient of football that he has ever played at this point in his career. And he's a lot closer right now, like I was just saying, he's a lot closer to the Peyton Manning and Tom Brady's of the world than he was to the Brett Favre like type of player that he was when he came in the league. So you want to think about his evolution. If you want to make an analogy, he was a lot closer to, Shaquille O'Neal when he came into the league, just using his brute force and strength. And now he's more like Magic Johnson with the way he's distributing the ball. And I think that it brings up an interesting philosophical question where, remember how we were talking about the 4 great offensive linemen with one awful offensive lineman versus 5 average offensive linemen? I wanted to get your thoughts, Austin, on what is maybe the better option. Would you rather have a guy like Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, 2 of the best players at their positions, and then they're flanked by guys like Kobe Hamilton and Josh Harris as their backups? Or would you rather have what the Steelers have now, which is not an overly talented group where there isn't a definitive number 1 guy at either position, but there's a lot of depth there?
Taking away the drama, even then I still would take the spread right now. I like where it's at. I like where the team is at with how they're spreading the ball and how everyone's just helping each other. There's no drama with it. Everyone gets their share and they get to do their part. So I like where it is now. It really was a shame when the Steelers, all they had after Antonio Brown was before Juju Smith-Schuster was like Kobe Hamilton and Sammy Coates, and that was really tough. But I mean, I like where the Steelers are at now.
Hard to believe that we thought that the Steelers made it to the AFC Championship game with that wide receiver core.
It really is. It's wild. I mean, I still love Eli Rogers. I don't care that he's not on a roster. He deserves to be on a practice squad somewhere. But other than that was a really tough wide receiver core.
Indeed it was. That was the year Martavis Bryant was suspended for the season. But every week so far to this point of the season, the Steelers have had a different leading receiver every week, which means the guy that's up this week is James Washington. So keep an eye out for your bold prediction. It should be James Washington leading the team in receiving yards the next week.
Hey, what if it's Vance McDonald's turn?
It could be, or James Conner. It could be either. I think what's interesting is that we have seen now, and we'll kind of transition here into what the offense itself is changing now. This is finally a modern NFL offense. We saw a lot of things that a lot of NFL teams are using, and they've been using motion a lot. We know that they have, but this is the first time it was executed well, and I think the first time that we really saw it pay off in a big way. We saw a lot of jet motion. We saw Chase Claypool score his first NFL rushing touchdown on it, on that little jet sweep. And we saw it come into play again on the goal line when James Conner scored his touchdown because the defender had to follow Chase Claypool on his jet motion because he had scored a touchdown on it earlier. So it vacated the middle and James Conner ran it in for a touchdown. So we're already seeing dividends there. I know it was kind of slow to start, but here we are now, and it's paying off. And it's not just him. It's Ray McLeod who came on with the biggest run of the entire game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we're finally starting to see a modern NFL with these guys, and I think it's really helping Ben Roethlisberger to distribute the ball like we were talking about. There isn't a go-to guy. There's a bunch of different guys, and it's not just the same 5 guys that are on the field. You think about everyone that has participated and has been at least somewhat of a contributing or supporting factor. I mean, there's 5 receivers that have, there's 3 running backs that have, and there's 2 tight ends. Everyone has played a part so far.
Yeah, the spread offense has been working too. It's not even that they're playing a part. It's just all of it is working, and I really, really love the motion. I feel like I was ready for Ray McLeod to finally get the ball after seeing him last week because it seemed like they were setting up for it. They just wanted the teams to not be expecting it, and then I knew that this week Ray McLeod was going to be getting it, and he now has the Steelers' longest run of the season after overtaking James Conner's, I believe, 56-yarder against the Broncos. So that was really cool to see. And overall, it's just there's still, even with the spread, people are still eating. There's still one guy that still has the best performance, and in this game it was Chase Claypool by far.
Yeah, so he wasn't expected. He said himself he wasn't expecting to be a big focal point, but that was forced into being necessary because of the second injury to Deontay Johnson, which, by the way, injured on the punt return with a back injury. I'm starting to think that it's going to be Ray McLeod back there to return punts now. Even though Deontay's explosive, I think he's too valuable of a receiver on offense to be putting him back there right now.
Yeah, and it's not like Ray McLeod has shown his previous downfalls. Not yet. The reason why he didn't stick with the other teams like the Bills, the Panthers, was because he had a fumbling issue and wasn't able to catch on, and he seemed to fumble on kick returns a lot. But that hasn't shown yet, and in fact, Deontay Johnson's probably scarier at the moment. So I have no problem taking Deontay Johnson off and just letting McLeod run. And even if he fumbles, like I feel like it's just going to happen. It usually happens like once a year where it's just something odd happens, but I think that he could retain it too. He's shown to be explosive and good at both, so why not let him take over? Let him have an expanded role if he's not going to be a major focal point for the offense. I mean, this past game he played a pretty solid role, but he's not as focal as Deontay Johnson.
I mean, if fumbling is an issue, Johnson's already fumbled 4 times in his career. So, I mean, if
exactly, it's not a make or break thing.
If we're that worried about fumbles, then how about we take Deontay Johnson off of it because he's had more of an issue of it as of late.
Yeah, so moving McLeod over there isn't even like a downgrade in that regard.
So, obviously, I think Ben is playing some of the best ball of his career, and if he starts to get the deep ball going, I think he'll be pretty close to playing the best ball of his career, maybe right about there. In terms of his cerebral field general type of leadership right now, he's the best he's ever been. His football mind has never been better.
Yeah, man. The last touchdown to Ray McLeod, the receiving touchdown over Gary, was him changing the play at the line because he saw what the coverage was, and he changed it and made it a touchdown to Claypool. So he was really reading defenses really well. He's playing smart and, again, efficiently. Only 1 interception on the year, which I will say again was a bad interception, but that is like less than what we're accustomed to through 4 weeks. Usually there's like 3 by now. 3, I'd say 2 is like a minimum.
And how much of that do you think is him not forcing the ball to Antonio Brown anymore?
I don't know. It really makes you think. We didn't get to see last season obviously without Antonio Brown, but this year it might be because he is allowed to spread the ball and he doesn't have to worry about that. It's true. It's a fair point.
I think it's definitely something that is possible. I just don't know how much of an impact it makes. So let's turn to the offensive line. They didn't get a huge push in the ground game, and I know that Ben was only sacked once, but I feel like he was still getting a lot of pressure on him early, not so much later in the game. I think overall, good job by the offensive line, but I think we need to remind ourselves that this unit is not ever going to be the unit it was a couple years ago. Not this year. And with the personnel, you just need it to be adequate enough. And I think that right now it is, but I am concerned about Pouncey and DeCastro because if they are not there, then you've got some real issues.
Yeah, that would really stink. I mean, I like Dotson so far, but without both of them, that's really tough. Luckily, the news for Marquise Pouncey is that it shouldn't hurt his availability going forward. DeCastro, he hasn't exactly been ruled out yet, but that abdominal injury kind of got him out of this past game, ruled him out of this past game pretty quick. So that's a little bit worrisome, although he hasn't been ruled out for next week, but I can't see DeCastro playing yet. But really, the Steelers can't afford another loss on the offensive line at this moment. Dotson seems like he can play, and I'd rather DeCastro, but that seems okay. But anything else going forward, it's like the Steelers don't have enough depth for. It's just like it's too many injuries to fix. And luckily, even with those injuries, I thought they still played well. They only allowed 1 sack. There did seem like a lot of pressure, but 1 sack isn't really bad. And of course, it came from former Steeler John Hargrave, but I think it was actually split between Hargrave and Cox. But
yes, it was.
Yeah, I forgot. I think just Hargrave was the first one to get there. But yeah, overall, the offense.
I'd like to see them get a little bit more of a push in the ground game typically, but I understand why they didn't necessarily get that this past week. I had a point I was going to make. I can't remember it. You still there, Austin? Sounds like we lost Austin for a moment. I'm guessing his internet cut out. We'll wait for him to get back here. But you talk about the offensive line. It's just something I've been thinking about lately is just the way that the NFL seems to be going, the way college football seems to be going. I'm not sure that there are really that many great offensive lines anymore. I remember what I was going to ask. I'm curious as to what the news is on Stefan Wisniewski. He's been on injured reserve for long enough now where he can come off of injured reserve. So can Wisniewski come back? They're lacking in depth right now, and maybe Wisniewski could provide a bit of a boost. Do you know what's going on with Stefan Wisniewski, Austin? Is he going to come off IR this week, do you think?
I have not heard anything in regards to Stefan Wisniewski. I don't know. I haven't heard anything basically since his injury where they said, like, yeah, he seems like he could return later in the season. It might be more of the 8-week variety since we haven't heard anything. But I guess we'll just have to see.
Definitely want him back as quickly as possible with everything going on. Running backs, not a ton of room, but good enough. James Conner had an explosive run. Benny Snell had the first down that closed out the football game. Anthony McFarland was used early, but I didn't see him much after that. And Ray had the very long run on the day. So, the streak of 100-yard rushers comes to an end, but they still managed to get 136 rushing yards, so decent day. And in the passing game, we already talked about how it was spread out between 8 different receivers on Sunday, and it was Chase Claypool's day. And he really shined. He had 4 total touchdowns. Could have possibly had a 5th. I looked at that play a few more times, Austin. I'm pretty sure that he stepped out of bounds.
That's a shame. I mean, still, he should have had the catch, but...
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you saying that he stepped out of bounds while he was catching it, or...?
No. He would have had the catch, but he would not have had the 5th touchdown, necessarily. I mean, okay. He could have scored later in the drive, but that was a bad call, and... it is what it is, but I mean I think that would have been the most impressive touchdown of the day, honestly, from an own individual effort. I mean, either that or a second one.
Yeah, I mean, he broke that man's ankles. That poor man was on the ground, and it's just like because he moved his arm over him, it looked like a push off, and the refs called it. And I would just like to say that I thought this game was fireable for the refs. I really did. Like one of them, I don't know who specifically, but. The amount of bad calls going on both sides. Like, I think of the early pass interference on Darius Slay for the Eagles. Like, that wasn't pass interference. I mean, yeah, it benefited the Steelers, but that was bad. Then I think of the Kevin Dotson illegal man downfield where he's at the line of scrimmage and the refs lost track of where the line of scrimmage is. How do you have a line judge? How do you lose track of where the line of scrimmage is? How do you call an illegal man downfield? I was ready to rip Kevin Dotson, like, man, like, I know you're a rookie, but you can't do that. And then I'm like, wow, the refs really, really that bad, huh? Then there's just other calls. I can't remember them all, but I just remember thinking, like...
The OPI on Claypool?
Oh, the Vince Williams roughing the passer.
Oh, yeah, that was bad, yeah.
The Vince Williams roughing the passer was another one. I was like, literally Wentz had the ball for about maybe a second before he got hit. So that was a bad play, bad call. I'm sure I'm forgetting some for the Eagles because obviously I'm focused on what happened to the Steelers. But like it wasn't just like bad ones against the Steelers. There were bad ones against the Eagles as well, other than the Darius Slay first pass interference call. But yeah, well, I got my rant out.
Do you have any final thoughts on the offense other than thank God the Steelers kept Ray McLeod instead of Ryan Switzer? Although no offense to him.
Oh yeah, that's paid dividends. We're gonna see him this week though, unless I missed that the Browns cut him off their practice squad, but he's chilling with the Browns practice squad at the moment. But the one thing I wanted to say about the offense with the running backs is it's really nitpicky. It was run 2 times with Anthony McFarland. I hated it. I call it a tap toss. I don't know what it's actually called. Maybe it's called a junk toss. I hated it. I hate that play. I don't know if you saw it, what I'm talking about, because two of McFarland's runs were using it. Like, they bends the ball, McFarland's right next to him, he just tosses it up to him really quick. It might just be called a quick toss, but that's not what I know a quick toss as. I hate that.
Was that because
play.
Was that because it was out of the shotgun? Is that what you're talking about?
I believe so. I can't remember at this point, but I just remember watching that play. I say, "Wow, I hate that play," and then them running it a second time, like, "Wow, they did it again."
I do not remember that, though. I will have to take a look back. But
yep, they did it twice.
I mean, closing thoughts on the offense: 38 points. I know the Eagles' defense hasn't been great, but no defense has really been great this year. They did it without a guy who has been one of their more consistent receivers over the last, 20 games for the most part. And they didn't have a great ground game, and they didn't hit on the deep ball, and they still put up 38 points. So all that being considered, I feel really good about where this offense is going right now. Barring the health of their offensive linemen, that needs to be in tip-top shape. But if it is, I feel good.
Getting Wisniewski back would be huge, because I feel much better about depth going forward.
Yeah, as much as I love J.C. Hassenauer, I don't want to see him play unless if it's in a blowout.
I want to see him play unless it's back on the iron.
Yeah, that's never happening. R.I.P.
No.
So on the other side, my first caveat is going to be, Austin, before we get into the defense, because they did play bad. First of all, there are some good things that they did. And second of all, I wanted to go through a couple things about the way the NFL is right now this year. So we know that the NFL is in the middle of its highest scoring year ever, right? So I think I was wrong in what I said earlier this year when I said that back after the 2011 lockout that scoring was down. I think I heard that wrong. I think scoring was actually up, because that's what's happening this year. So I must have just heard that wrong, because scoring is way up this year. And I think that we've seen a lot of that too. I don't know if you know this, but the Steelers not getting a holding call until this past week is not coincidence. The Steelers have drawn on defense one holding penalty all year. Do you really think that TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, and Cam Hayward were only held once this whole year?
No chance. There's no way.
So the NFL absolutely told their officials to keep the flags in the pockets right now. I don't know if it's something they're going to do for the whole year. I have kind of a crazy theory. I think that with ratings being down for a lot of different sports over the course of the last few months, I think the NFL decided that a good way to get a little bit of a boost would be to increase offense, because that's always a way to increase things. And even if it's for a short time, I think that by doing that, by putting the flags in the pockets for offensive holding and throwing the same amount, if not more, flags for defensive pass interference than we've ever seen, I think that helps get people drawn in for fantasy football reasons and for just the entertainment of higher scoring games. You can call me crazy if you want, but the fact of the matter is that the NFL has made it easier for offenses to thrive. And one of the defense's only advantages was the athletic talent of defensive linemen against offensive linemen, and that advantage has been taken away from them. And one of the teams that it hurts the most is the Steelers.
Yeah, that's tough. It's an interesting theory. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if it's on purpose or not. I could see it for sure, but I'm not really sold either way. I don't know if maybe this might have been something they even discussed prior to season being down. Like, hey, like unless you actually see it, like don't call it. I'm not really sure.
I won't dispute that it might have been discussed earlier, but they've definitely changed things, and I don't know that it's going to be the new normal. It could be. I just think that they did it for now. I think that it will kind of return closer to the mean, because these things have a tendency to change during the course of the year. It might sound crazy, but that does happen.
Yeah, I feel like the pass interference ruling changed halfway through last year.
It did.
Like how it worked.
It did. It went from nothing got overturned to all of a sudden some things got overturned to too much was getting overturned, and then back the other way again where nothing was getting overturned.
So that one changed multiple times. So I could see this changing later on in the year.
But I mean, let's go back and talk about, because the Steelers' defense, which is supposed to be amazing, has not been as good as advertised the last few weeks, and this past game they were not good. But I don't want to read too much into it, because let's look at some of the really good teams in the NFL, and let's look at their schedules this year and some of the things that they've dealt with. So the Seattle Seahawks are one of the 4 undefeated teams left in the NFL. They gave up 30 points to the New England Patriots at home, and they gave up 31 to the Dallas Cowboys, and they just gave up 26 to the Vikings at home. They're in the middle of a stretch right now where they've given up 25-plus points at home. It's like the longest streak in NFL history. It's nuts when you think about that. The LA Rams, they gave up 35 points to the Buffalo Bills. So, I mean, they're supposed to have a good team, too. The Green Bay Packers, another one of those undefeated teams. Let me check their schedule, because nothing's coming to mind right now. They gave up 34 points to the Vikings on opening day. They gave up 30 to the Saints, who have been struggling with their own offensive issues. So, I mean, you run down the list of the teams that are really good here. They've all had their issues this year. The Bears gave up 26 points to a Falcons team that doesn't have a win yet this year. That's just NFC teams. The Bills just gave up 42 points to the Tennessee Titans earlier, like an hour ago, and they had an extra week to prepare, you know?
And they were playing against a practice squad team. The Titans were not at full strength. They did not have everyone they could have.
The Ravens gave up 34 points to the Chiefs. Based on the way that game went, they could have easily given up more. The Browns gave up 38 to the Ravens. The Chiefs just gave up 40 points at home to the Raiders, of all teams. So, I mean, you sit here and look at the Steelers' defense and say, yeah, they didn't play well on Sunday, and yeah, they need to be better. But I think it's important to keep perspective. Overall, in terms of their general statistics from points, yards, sacks, turnovers, they're still a top 10 defense right now.
Exactly. They're actually still this is a historic defense in some facets. Still, their tackles for a loss through the first 4 games is the most for a Steelers team ever. They're doing really good in that regard, and the lack of rush yard up until 1 carry this week was really good as well. And they're on pace for 80 sacks, which that is going to slow down eventually. They a fourth of the way through the season. And they have 20 sacks, and that's wild to me.
Only one other team has done that before.
Yeah, they're still setting marks in certain areas where they are still one of the top defenses. So when you set the perspective, the Steelers defense is still, like John said, a top 10, and I'm willing to still say top 5. I can't name 9 defenses better than the Steelers. I might be able to name 4.
The point being is that you need to keep things, like I just said, and like you just said, keep things in perspective. We can't compare this team's numbers to the Steel Curtain defenses of the 1970s. We can't even compare it to the last great Steelers defense of 2008. The 2008 Steelers, they played 19 games, and in 16 of them, they gave up 300 yards of total offense, or less than 300 yards of total offense in a game. That is unheard of in today's NFL. That will not happen. That was the last truly great defense of the NFL before the modern defense, where you're going to give up yards, you're going to give up big plays. It's about turnovers, sacks, and red zone efficiency. You look at the 2013 Seahawks, the 2015 Broncos. Those are the defenses you want to model your game after right now, because that's how you win with defense in today's NFL. It's not by shutting teams out. It's by holding them to, under 20 instead, and getting 2 or 3 turnovers and putting pressure on the quarterback. It's a different brand of defense, but, the point persists. You just have to keep it in perspective.
100% agree.
So that being said, there are also encouraging signs. I know that they've had their issues, but remember, I think that the holding penalties are going to start being called a little more, so that'll help the Steelers' defense. The secondary has been put under a lot of stress this year with the Steelers' high blitz rate. I have a feeling that's going to come down. That should help them out a little bit. And even if the secondary hasn't been playing well, they have shown a baseline track record of playing better than they have so far. So there's reason to believe that they're going to get better. And Devin Bush is still enduring growing pains. I know that's disappointing, but he's still very young. There's still a lot of upside to this defense right now.
Yeah, man, there's tons of places this defense can still go. I think the number one thing is what you mentioned first is I think the coverage, or it might have been second, the coverage is going to get better. I think that the Steelers have been suffering a little bit from the blitz, like you said, and I think that once the Steelers stop blitzing as much, and I think they should, because I feel like they should be letting their front fours work, and stuff, and see how that pays off going forward. But that being said, also, I think a big reason why the coverage hasn't been as good is because we're seeing less Cam Sutton and more Mike Hilton. It's a trade-off, and I'm not. Mike Hilton's been playing solid this year, not great, definitely solid, because he's boom or bust is how it works. Is if he's in coverage, it's not very good, but if he's playing at the line, he's getting sacks, he's been getting tackles for a loss. He's been really good at tackler, other than against Miles Sanders this past week. But in coverage, he's a detriment. Whereas if you're putting Cameron Sutton in, you have a really good coverage defender, at least from last year. You only had a really small sample size, but I think we're going to see more Cameron Sutton likely going forward over Mike Hilton. They'll be switched out based on whatever package they want to use, but that should improve the coverage situation as well. And I don't want to misquote anything, but I can't remember totally, but the Steelers have very weird statistics. They're giving up a lot of points this year, as we just talked about. They're giving up one of the lowest quarterback completion percentages in the league, which shows that they're literally their coverage is actually decent most of the time. What that tells me is they're getting burnt by the big plays. I don't remember where I was going to go after that, so I'll let you take over.
I was going to say they're getting burnt by big pass plays, and they're not being run on much because teams are struggling to have success running the ball. I mean, they've given up one explosive run all year. It was that Miles Sanders run. And if Bud Dupree is paying attention to what he's doing, he makes that tackle or slows Miles Sanders down. And if Mike Hilton doesn't just miss the tackle, he completely whiffed. If he even slows Sanders down for a second, that play is going to be like a 6-yard gain. He completely whiffed. And if he came close, we're not talking about that. That's the only explosive running play the Steelers have given up all season. After that run, he had 6 yards on the ground. That's it. So
6 yards on 10 carries.
Yeah. So, I mean, all in all, besides that, and I think 2 or 3 runs against the Broncos, and none of those runs by Melvin Gordon, I think they were all between 12 and 17 yards. Besides those 3 runs that he had, the Steelers' run defense has been the best it's ever been in team history. I mean, it's been amazing. So, just some sloppy play and some coverage breakdowns. The big thing in this game, I think that was more frustrating than anything else, besides leaving Travis Fulgham wide open too often, was the 3rd down and long conversions.
That has been bad. The 3rd down conversions seems like the most worrying thing. What's really scary is I was reading stats, I think right after the game. Steelers don't even blitz that much on 3rd and 4th down. Steelers are blitzing on 1st and 2nd down at 60%, and then they drop down their blitz rate at 20%. So it's not even like they're sending the house on 3rd and 4th down. It's just they're getting beat. They're letting these plays happen.
I'm going to compile a list of all the Eagles' converted 3rd downs over the next few moments here, and I'm going to let you know which ones they converted, because I know there's at least a 3rd and 17 and a 3rd and 12, and Sanders' touchdown run was on a 3rd and 9. It was a draw. That can't happen. It just can't.
Oh, yeah, that really hurt my feelings. I laughed at them for about half a second, and I realized, oh, this is going to work. And I was like, you're running on 3rd and 9? I would literally kill my team if they did that. And then I was like, oh, this is over. This is a touchdown. So that was really heartbreaking because I was judging them pretty hard for a second.
Is there anything else you wanted to cover for a moment while I'm trying to gather these up, bud?
Sure, I have nightmares of Travis Fulgham. Ever since that game, I was just like, oh, there's Travis Fulgham wide open. Oh, there's Travis Fulgham wide open. Oh, so now I have nightmares of that man. Also, a former Lions draft pick that has now moved on from the Lions, so that's how you know he was going to be godly when playing this game. Let's see.
Oh, what about how do you think Carson Wentz played? Because I actually think he played pretty well in this game.
Yeah, I thought Wentz was pretty good. I mean, he threw 2 picks, but
one of them
was just like a last-ditch effort.
One of them was literally just a punt. I mean, he purposefully threw it up, and the Steelers, if they were smart, they would have knocked it down.
Yeah. It's hard when you're in the middle of the moment. It's hard to be like, oh yeah, I should knock this down. Instead, Steven Nelson's like, oh, I could get my second pick of the day, and then he took that opportunity. I don't exactly blame him. But yeah, it would have been better if he knocked it down. But overall, for Wentz, I thought he did pretty well. I mean, he was pretty effective. I mean, his completion percentage wasn't that terrible. It's just that one pick early on was tough because that was a bad pick. That was terrible. He threw it right at Steven Nelson. I don't know what he saw, but other than that, he was okay, I felt like.
It's not showing me the selected rows. Come on, Pro Football Reference. All right, well, instead I've highlighted them, so I'll cover them for you. So they had what? How many third downs converted? They had 10. Do I have 10 here? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I am missing one. Of course I am. But in any case, I will... Oh, here it was. Never mind. Okay, there's 10. So they had... We already covered it. The 3rd and 9, 74-yard touchdown run by Miles Sanders. That can't happen. There's a 3rd and 3, 9-yard pass to Travis Fulgham. Okay, whatever. It's a 3rd and 3. 6-yard pass to Zach Ertz on a 3rd and goal from the 4. Whatever. A 3rd and 17. So that's another egregious one. A 20-yard pass to Travis Fulgham where Cam Sutton didn't get the proper depth on the play. A 3rd and 10 at the last play of the first half. Carson Wentz had a 37-yard pass to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I didn't even know he was active that day. But that can't happen. The Steelers are lucky the Eagles didn't have a timeout, or else the Eagles would have kicked a field goal there, or maybe would have had a chance to take a shot at the end zone. So that's 3 egregious poor third down plays there. A 3rd and 12, a 31-yard pass to Fulgham. So that's 4. I have a 3rd and 8, an 18-yard pass. That's 5. I count that I consider egregious. And then a 3rd and goal is a touchdown pass. I don't know if you want to consider that egregious. If you want, I wouldn't blame you. But the point is that of the 10 third down conversions that the Eagles had, at least 5 of them were more than 5 yards. And they were basically unacceptable to be given up. And, sometimes it happens during the course of the game. I'll give the Steelers one of those. So there's 4 plays right there that they absolutely had to be better with.
Yeah, and hopefully as the season goes on, they just figure it out and they get a little bit better. I'm not sure. You called it out. You saw it. You're like, watch out for Travis Fulgham. He broke out last week. I don't know if they're underprepared for him or what, but it looked like it.
Well, let me put it this way. There were a lot of... We know the Steelers are predominantly a man coverage team, and they played a lot of zone this week, and they struggled with that. Maybe they were a little rusty coming off the bye. I think that's nonsense. They should have been better. But what I will say is I think that they spent a lot of efforts trying to blanket Zach Ertz, and I will give them credit there because he only had 1 catch on 6 targets for 6 yards. So I think their plan was to take him away because in their mind it's like if he's not performing, it's going to be up to Greg Ward, Fulgham, and Miles Sanders. And again, besides the one run by Sanders, they did a good job bottling him up too. So it's like we'll take our chances with these no names, and if they don't blow so many coverages, then you just kind of pick your poison with him. You don't expect a guy like him to go off the way he did.
No, not at all. And I mean, yeah, you're right. Zach Ertz was kept in check, and it was just at the expense of letting Fulgham run wild.
Yeah, and obviously the Steelers could have done a better job containing him, but I mean, it is what it is. And the Steelers luckily had a receiver that outperformed him on the day. Any final thoughts on the defense? Look, it's concerning, obviously, but I think, again, in the grand scheme of things, it happens in today's NFL, especially with the way officials are calling things right now. They will get better, I feel. Now, if they give up 30 points, then the next 3 weeks, then you can hit the panic button. But for right now, I'm not. I'm a little concerned, but it's not anything I'm overly worried about. It happens.
Something I didn't like in this game on defense? The amount of times TJ Watt was sent inside. TJ Watt works best on the outside. I didn't like that. I don't know if there was a video replay of all the times Watt was sent inside. He got his butt put on the ground almost every single time, but by someone when he was pushed into the inside. I don't like that. I think that the defense would be better if they kept Watt to his outside position. I wasn't a fan of that. I don't know if you noticed that in the game.
I'm trying to see if they have snap. Here we go, snaps by position. This only has. All right, I need.
I don't think he was starting on the inside. I meant he was sending. They were sending him inside.
Oh, like on stunts?
Yeah, he was sent shooting gaps. I just sent you it on Twitter if you want to check that out later or something. But
I will. I can tell you that his PFF grade was by far the worst that he's had this season. He had 3 straight in the 90s. This one was at 60.
Yeah, this was a tough game for sure for him.
It is
he got the sack early on, but
it's been a strange. It was a strange game where the outside linebackers both had a sack in this game, but they both felt quiet.
Yeah, I mean, Watt was early, and that was it. And it wasn't like a great quick sack. Wentz rolled out of the pocket, and Watt was able to get there, so it didn't feel as great as normal. And then Bud Dupree.
I'll tell you who did have a good game was Stephon Tuitt. He had another sack in this one, a sack and a half actually. And if you believe Jonathan Vilma on the color commentator, I thought he did a good job, by the way. It was nice listening to him.
That was fun.
If he is to be believed, which I would imagine he's right, the sack that Tuitt had saved a touchdown because apparently Fulgham was wide open in the end zone.
I mean, Tuitt could have been really clutch in this game. He could have been the deciding factor in this game. Definitely played like it. 5 tackles, 1.5 sacks. That's some nice gameplay.
Yeah, he was definitely solid in this one. Special teams. Let's see. Another solid day for Chris Boswell. Besides the PAT in New York, he has not missed a single kick since then.
It's been pretty good. Seems like pretty Boswell-like. The one thing I want to point out on special teams is James Pierre had a really nice tackle that comes to mind when I think of the special teams. And Eagles tried to set the record for the Heinz Field field goal, at least at the NFL level, with a 57-yard field goal, and it did not work. And it might have been the reason why the Eagles lost this game.
It's funny. We were just talking about that on the last podcast, too, or at least we were off the air. We were talking about Heinz Field kicking records, and it's funny. He actually had the leg for it, but he did just push it wide. It's still hard. I don't know if because the field is in better shape now, but still the winds of the Ohio River kicking towards that old open end is still difficult. I thought Dustin Colquitt was solid in this game too. Only punted twice. He punted on the first drive and late in the game. Nothing overly spectacular, but I think he's been a little better the last couple of weeks. Ray McLeod, nothing too crazy on the return game so far, but they weren't in the headlines for the wrong reasons like they were a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I felt like overall pretty good.
We saw Ulysses Gilbert for the first time, by the way.
And he got a tackle. I think an assisted one, but a tackle.
You'll be interested to know that James Pierre had the highest graded special teams grade for the Steelers for PFF.
Interesting. His one tackle was really solid. I thought that's what came to mind when the first thing I thought of special teams was that I remembered it from the game.
I'm just diving into these special teams PFF stats. I haven't looked at any of them yet, and I'm looking. They have field goals, kickoffs, and punting grades. That's very interesting how in depth that is. I'll have to look at that some other time.
That's interesting.
All right, shall we talk a little bit about the NFL?
Sure. There's a bunch of wild stuff that happened.
All right.
First,
I was gonna say, I know that there's a lot to talk about with Dak Prescott, and we can get into that a little bit more with the game, but my goodness, that was an ugly injury.
Yeah, that's really, really sad, too. Dakota Prescott was having one of the best seasons for a quarterback, ever. The amount of yardage he was putting up was unheard of in the first few games of the season. He was literally on track for records, and he wasn't really in talks, but I felt like he was going to be entering VP talks. His team is just bad. That's part of the reason why his whole team was very bad, especially on defense, which has kept him out of the talks when you have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. So, but unfortunately, that has come to a close for this season. He has a compound fracture in his ankle and the bone punctured skin. He is not likely to come back for a very long time, at least in my mind, 6 months. I hope that he's ready for next season, but we're gonna have to see. It really sucks. You could see based on everyone's face and everything going on, they knew what it meant, and it really sucks that this was a franchise tag year. I feel really bad for him. It was just really, really sad. It was really tough. It was tough to watch.
I still think he's going to get a really good amount of money either way. I know that he would get more if he was still playing, but I think that he's going to be in okay shape. The big question is, how long is it going to take him to come back? And I think it's kind of interesting because we had a guy come back from a similar type of catastrophic injury, though to a different part of the body on Sunday. But this is now the second time in the last couple of years we've seen a major compound fracture where the bone pierced the skin essentially. And from everything I understand, the ankle is not as serious as the leg, like what happened with Alex Smith. So they say 6 months. Hopefully that means he's up to stuff. I am very curious to see what happens because he's not under contract next year. What happens? They can't necessarily franchise or transition tag him because of the injury guarantees. So what do you do? I'll be very interested to see what happens.
Might also take the franchise tag as disrespectful and not sign it. There's a lot of layers to that. There's a lot of layers to that.
Yeah, and who's to say that a team wouldn't offer him the money, accepting the risk of what's going on, and say anyways, we know that he's still recovering, but we think that he could be our guy. And what if Dallas would have to? I would assume Dallas would try to match. I mean, maybe they wouldn't, but I have to think that they don't want to lose Prescott. I mean, Prescott is the leader of that team. That is his team.
Yeah. I mean, he is not the reason why that team sucks. That's for sure. That team sucks because their defense is awful. He has been playing pretty well. Turnovers, not so great, but he was playing well overall. With the amount of time he was throwing, it wasn't really that many turnovers. But, sorry, you were saying?
I was just going to say, I've never been the biggest fan of his. I've always thought he was a tad overrated, but the way he's played this year, I think if you swap him and Daniel Jones, the only difference between those two teams right now, excluding the quarterbacks, is the receiver core. I think there's a good chance that if you put Dak Prescott on the Giants, they are 1-3, and the Cowboys would be 0-4. Like, he is the only reason they have been not a pushover this year.
Exactly. Like, he's trying his best to be Russell Wilson here and then fight against his own defense, but it's just not that his defense is even worse somehow, which is really scary.
So we'll get more into the aspect of the Cowboys and what they'll be doing from now on, when we get into the game itself. But obviously, we're hoping for a speedy recovery from him, and hopefully, we'll see him back on the field. Hopefully, as soon as next year. But thankfully, the surgery he had was deemed a success, so that is very good.
Yes, sir.
All right. News that broke during the Titans-Bills game earlier today, the Jets released Le'Veon Bell. We saw a couple days ago that Coach Adam Gase was upset that Bell took his frustrations to his usage by the Jets on offense to Twitter. Gase publicly acknowledged that he didn't appreciate that. Then reports came out this morning that the Jets were shopping Bell. They found no suitors, so they cut him today. And thus ends a quite forgettable tour with the New York Jets for Le'Veon Bell, where he made, what was it, like $28 million for 20 games, something like that?
Yeah, 28 for 18. Even better. Averaged over $1 million per game. It just goes to show the grass isn't greener on the other side. Isn't always greener on the other side, I should say. And it just feels... It feels vindicating. When the Bell stuff went down, everyone called Steelers fans salty and like, oh, listen, we've tried telling them, it's like, listen, you shouldn't pay a running back that much, and the Steelers were still trying to, and Mans was playing against a really good offensive line. He's not going to perform as well behind the Jets' offensive line. And they said, no, you're just salty Steelers fans. You don't know what we're talking about. All right, bet. And now fast forward a year and a half, and he's off the team, and the Jets have $12 million dead cap and $4 million on the dead cap next year. Have fun. It's great. Steelers fans didn't tell you.
Say what you will about the way they used him too. I mean, the fact of the matter is that is a horribly run team, but it really does look like he's just out of steam now. And I don't know. Like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if he retired.
I really think he might. Gase did use him wrong. I will support that. Gase did not split him out wide as much as the Steelers did, and that's where I thought he succeeded the most. It wasn't as a running back in his final season with the Steelers. He was just meh. Like, okay, where he excelled was his pass catching, and that's where Gase should have used him more. He had one catch for 7 yards in the pass game that just played against the Cardinals, and they don't involve him as much in the passing game. I'm pretty sure they targeted Frank Gore more in that game. I'm not 100% on that, but I'm pretty sure they did. And that's just, like, unacceptable. That's Le'Veon Bell's best skill set, and you're wasting it. I won't be surprised if he goes and finds a team and puts up better stats. I still don't think he's going to put up ground stats that were as good as his, like, first few years with the Steelers. I feel like he could still be a solid pass catcher for a team. I don't know where he's going. It's not going to be Pittsburgh.
Good God, I hope not. But no, he wouldn't come back after. And, speaking of vindication, you want to talk about the killer bees, and we'll include Martavis Bryant in this. Since all those guys left Pittsburgh, let's start with Brown. He had the one game, 4 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. He's a felon now, at least an accused felon. Has not played a game in the NFL besides that since then. Has been on 2 different teams. Has all sorts of issues and has a suspension waiting if he ever comes back to the NFL. Lev Bell had one extremely mediocre year and a very quiet, injury-plagued year to start this season and is now on the street. And Martavis Bryant had, 12 games, 19 catches, like 2 touchdowns with the Raiders, and he got suspended again too. And I don't think Bryant did, but I know Bell and especially Brown kind of trashed Ben on the way out. And you remember 2 years ago, everyone was down on Ben and everyone was saying, oh, it's his fault. But, 2 years from that point, here we are sitting with those 3 guys out of a job, and very likely all of their careers are done. And Ben is still going, and like we said at the start of the show, playing maybe some of the best ball of his career. So I think it's quite clear that Ben was not the problem.
Yeah. The only one of those guys I'd welcome back is Brian. If Brian wants to come back from his, because he shouldn't be suspended again with the new CBA once he gets put back in, because they've relaxed their.
Yeah, his problem was just the weed. I laughed when I saw it on Twitter, although I guess I shouldn't have. But Chase Claypool is just Martavis Bryant without the weed issues.
It's true though. So he didn't trash the team when he left.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it was more of abrupt, because it was just like, oh, here's draft night. Oh, Martavis Bryant's moving for a 3rd round pick. Okay, goodbye. And that was basically it. I never had any ill will towards Martavis Bryant. I wish he didn't get suspended as much, but like, he was actually really solid when he played. And so he's a guy. If he ever gets put back, I'd say I'd take a chance on him. But the other two, Bell and Brown, trashed Ben as they left, so it is not going to happen. Bell said that a part of the reason why he left was because of Ben. So even if you want him back, which I don't, but I know some Steelers fans are saying it already.
Of course.
It's not likely to happen.
Yeah, no. I think you texted me and said it too. Like you said, like there is, like, you wouldn't even like because at first we thought they were going to try to dump him, like we've been seeing in the NHL, where they trade a draft pick with that player to a team so that they eat his contract. And you can only do so much of that in the NFL because of the way their salary cap structure is set up. But I wouldn't have even wanted to do that. There's just so little coming in return for him. I didn't think there was a purpose.
The Steelers don't have cap space, man. Like, it's not. Steelers aren't even the team that could have done that. Like, maybe the Browns, which even then the Browns would actually, funny enough, make sense for the next few weeks. That with Nick Chubb going out, they could have actually used Bell for a little while behind Kareem Hunt, but it's like the only team that could have really made it work, and even they weren't interested. I don't know if maybe the Jets just weren't interested in doing that. Maybe the Jets were like, no, we'll sit with the dead cap instead of a draft pick. I don't know.
Did you see what I sent you on Twitter?
I did not.
So I sent you something that basically said, like, the NFL team's biggest issue with trading for him was not his cap hit this year. It's the injury guarantee next year that they were all concerned about.
Yeah, that's pretty tough. It really is tough. I can understand that. The Jets' contract was exactly what he wanted. He wanted those guarantees, and it came back to bite the Jets now.
He made, I still think, I forget the name of his agent, but that guy gave him some of the worst career advice he could have ever had, and it's too late now.
Derailed a Hall of Fame career. It's really, really a shame.
You really do just hate to see it at the end of the day.
I think his name is like Adisa.
Adisa Bakari. Bakari.
Yeah, there we go.
That was his name. Yeah, I mean, yeah, just same thing with Brown. You know, what could have been, really.
I mean, I still, after the Antonio Brown stuff, I've eased up on Bell, so I still wish for the best, and I kind of hope, part of me wishes that he will have a little bit better of an end to his career. I hope this isn't it for him. He's never going to be the same as he was with the Steelers. Like when he was rushing for 200 yards against the Buffalo Bills. He's never going to be like that again.
That was a fun game.
That was a fun game. That was a great game.
I'll miss going to games because we're never going to get to go again.
No. Oh, not at this rate.
All right, so let's get into recapping the rest of the NFL Week 5. I know that we were going to talk about the Titans a little bit, but from other things that I've seen, I'm not sure exactly what's going on. I think the NFL is just taking more time with their punishment right now. I just think they're trying to downplay things right now because they want to take eyes away from that. But they did. They moved a ton of games, though.
Oh, yeah. I wish I had that. We could talk about that because there's so many. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember. They moved a bunch of Chargers games. All I remember off that.
Where were we? All right, so we talked about Thursday night already. Let me get to the scores of the games for Week 5. The Carolina Panthers have won 3 straight games now, 23-16 over the Falcons. The Falcons canned Dan Quinn and their general manager, whose name escapes me right now.
Yeah, it looks like Dan Quinn is the first to fall of the 3 we talked about.
Mm-hmm. Which is weird.
I forget.
Sorry, go ahead.
Who we each picked, honestly. I think I did pick Quinn.
I thought he was going to be last just because of the way Dan Quinn kind of backed him last year, and I don't think Quinn had ever fired a coach mid-season before, so I was just kind of thinking they're going to ride it out to the end of the year now.
I'm not sure, but by the way, I got up all the schedule changes. I was looking for it. So, Broncos Patriots is now in Week 6. It didn't happen this week. Bills Chiefs, that was Thursday Night Football game, is now Monday Night Football. I can't remember the last time there wasn't a Thursday Night Football, which there won't be in Week 6. Jets Dolphins is now in Week 6. Jets Chargers now to Week 11. Jags Chargers to Week 7. Chargers Broncos to Week 8. Chargers Dolphins to Week 10. And Dolphins Broncos to Week 11. So that is a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 moves. 8. To accommodate the Patriots and the Titans.
Big shout out to the NFL staffers that worked on that. That's crazy.
Oh my God, the applied math and statistics that went into that is wild.
My goodness. But the Panthers have won 3 straight. We were thinking they might only win 4 games this year. They already have 3. Teddy Bridgewater played really well. They're humming along, and I think the best thing that could ever happen for a rookie coach is to outperform his expectations in his first year, because that buys you like 2 more years right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing really well, much better than I expected. I thought their roster didn't have enough talent on it. They're doing enough, and Robbie Anderson, I felt like, has been shining. They've been doing it without Christian McCaffrey, too, which is pretty insane. I would have never thought. If you told me that the Panthers didn't have Christian McCaffrey for, 3 games, I would have told you, and you asked me how many wins they had, I would have said they're winless. I thought they would have heavily relied on Christian McCaffrey. Mike Davis has stepped up for them. And the Panthers at the moment kind of look like a fringe playoff team with the new 7-team playoff system.
Yeah, they could be in the talks right now. Their receivers, like you said, Anderson and DJ Moore, have been very good. And when they get McCaffrey back, all of a sudden you might be able to split him and Mike Davis out together, and then you're talking about actually like a really pretty scary offense right now. So that's good. And then on the other side, for the Falcons, kind of an interesting position for a new coach to walk into. You've got this young, for the most part, really talented core group of skill position players, and you've got Todd Gurley, who's an older back, but he's still playing. He's still being productive right now. And an aging quarterback in Matt Ryan, who might be regressing a bit right now. Maybe his best days are behind him. Maybe he just needs a shot in the arm. This is an interesting spot because on paper they should be better than they are, but they just have not been. So are they maybe just not that good anymore? Are they in decline, or can there be a quick reform around this team?
I think they're in decline. There's already talks that they're sellers. They're going to be sellers at the trade deadline. And who knows who that means? It could be the end of Keanu O'Neal. A name being floated around is Julio Jones, which would be huge if he got traded. I don't really know who. There wasn't anyone specifically pointed out. Like they talked about Julio Jones as a candidate, but the Falcons are interested in being sellers at the trade deadline, from a report from Pro Football Talk. So I think they are in decline and they're going for a rebuild.
The one thing to note is that Matt Ryan's contract basically makes him uncuttable this year. The earliest you can cut him is after next season. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's tough.
I don't know, maybe you do that thing where you take a quarterback not in the first round and you let him sit for a year.
That's unheard of. Don't do that. We don't do that in these parts.
The Raiders dumped 40 points on the Chiefs. Mind you, they scored a grand total of 3 points. between the first and third quarters as well. A very impressive showing from Derek Carr, who Henry Ruggs looks like his own version of Tyreek Hill. The Raiders have something going after two disappointing losses the last couple weeks. The Chiefs, who besides the Ravens game have looked not all that great this season, and all of a sudden the AFC West has not been won yet by the Chiefs.
Yeah, this is wide open. The Chiefs are kind of a little bit underperforming so far this year, not as dominant as they were last year. The Chargers took them to overtime, and now they lose to the Raiders. Like that's tough. Like I'm not going to say that they're not like still a great team. I mean, as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy, that team is a great team. But they're not as dominant as they were last year.
Remember that it is, of course, a long season, but definitely is not something I was expecting. This is the first time I think the Raiders have beaten the Chiefs in the Mahomes era, so maybe there's a blueprint there. I don't know. Time will tell. There is quite a blueprint to beat the New York Jets, now sans Le'Veon Bell, as we know, and that is simply to have a competent football team as the Arizona Cardinals do. Kyler Murray, after having a couple low total offensive passing yardage numbers, put up almost 400 in this one. Joe Flacco and the Jets. Honestly, Jamison Crowder is the only person on that team that's producing, and it doesn't matter who's there. So, kudos to him. But everywhere else, the Cardinals are just outclassed him.
I have nothing to say other than the Jets are 0-16 team.
The Los Angeles Rams beat the Washington football team 30-10. Kyle Allen got a concussion, and Alex Smith finally returned. Big moment for him. And it was certainly quite a scary return because Aaron Donald decided to bear down on him. And you were really hoping that if Alex Smith was going to come back, it would have been not against Aaron Donald.
Yeah, you can't always plan for that, I guess. Yeah, I mean, good for Alex Smith to make a return to the football field. Even being able to play at all is a victory in itself for him because of how scary his injury was. So, honestly, good for him.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the injury, too, which was Joe Theismann-esque, but it was the infections he suffered afterwards that threatened him losing his leg and threatened his life, too. So, I mean, definitely a huge comeback story for him. Kind of scary that he had to go up against Donald, who had the 4 sacks in this one, but he is okay, so onwards and upwards for him. The Bengals, who I don't think it was you that told me, but someone said, I may have even said I heard it from someone, but someone told me the Bengals were unblowoutable. Well, they were blown out, 27-3 by the Ravens. Patrick Queen, Joe Burrow's LSU teammate, recovered a fumble and took it to the house for a 60-plus yard touchdown. Bengals, this is what I thought it was going to look like when you have those offensive line issues that they have.
This was wild to me. I thought the Bengals could be somewhat competitive in this game, and they just were not. It was a really bad game for them all around. And, the Ravens are just the better team.
I've heard it said that the Ravens' offense is just not producing the same way. Like, Lamar Jackson has not been throwing the ball well this year. Even, not that he was ever...
This year?
I knew you were going to say that, but I mean, he's throwing the ball worse this year than he did last year is basically all I was trying to say.
Only because I'm not sure about that. I think he's being forced to throw more. And I don't think he's throwing worse. I think he's throwing more. That's also bad. So I think that's part of the problem. I feel like I'm not hearing about Lamar Jackson rushing crazily like he was last year.
He ran the ball twice. He had 2 carries.
Exactly. So this is part of the problem. And this is what I said going into this year. I had a theory. I had a hypothesis. I said, this year, the Ravens aren't going to be able to rush as much. They're not going to be able to rely on Lamar Jackson's legs as much because teams have it figured out going into next year. They weren't prepared for it last year. They're going to be prepared for it this year. And they are. And Ravens are still good enough where that doesn't matter. But honestly, I think it's just because they improved their defense so much that that's able to make up for it. Because you look at their defense now, and their defense is kind of stacked. Other than pass rush isn't working out, but they have really good coverage guys. They got Calais Campbell now. And that kind of like makes up for the deficit of the Ravens not being able to run as effectively as they were last year. But you are seeing Lamar Jackson throw more, which is a detriment to his team. I will always say that, and will continue to say it until I am proven wrong.
Sorry. I did not mean for that video to start playing. I was just trying to look at his rushing statistics at this point during the season. So his single game high this year, besides the opener, is 204 yards.
I'm sorry.
His passing yards. Jackson's passing yardage high this season. Like against the Chiefs, he threw for 97 yards. Remember?
Yeah, he had 16 yards going to the half. 16 yards passing.
The Houston Texans got on the board with a win. Romeo Crennel, as I figured, would lead the Texans to a victory against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Interesting stat, Austin. I don't know if you saw this. The Jacksonville Jaguars are the first team in NFL history to lose 4 straight games in a season to winless teams.
Wait, they really... The last 4 teams they played were winless when they met them?
Yep. Well, now the Titans... Wait, that can't be right. I guess technically, in a way, it was. No, they played the Titans, though. I must have...
Yeah, okay.
Someone must have been wrong about it. It must have been the last 3 games. That must have been it. Yeah, it was...
They played the Titans in the last 3 games. They played Colts week 1. I'm confused.
No, they played the Dolphins, Bengals, and Texans. That's why. I was off by 1. I was off by 1.
Oh, okay. Understood.
But that's still kind of odd. But yeah, the Jaguars are just not a very talented team.
No. They came out looking like they were going to exceed expectations a little bit by beating the Colts, but no, Phillip Rivers is just bad. The Jaguars aren't that much better.
Yeah, so speaking of Phillip Rivers being bad, him and Baker Mayfield were trying to go back and forth between who was going to lose this game, and Phillip Rivers won that battle. And I don't think Baker Mayfield's playing that well this year. But then again, neither is Phillip Rivers. He really struggled. The Browns, despite the fact that Mayfield hasn't been super great, the Browns have scored 30-plus points in, I think, 4 straight games now, and they're 4-1, and they're coming to Heinz Field, as we know. So that's a big game. Even though they weren't super dominant running the ball, our old Orlando Apollos AAF star Dearness Johnson helped Kareem Hunt out with 32 yards on the ground. The Browns are finding ways to win.
Yeah, it helps when you have the number 1 rushing offense still, even after a not-so-good rushing offense game. But, I mean, they're doing well enough. And I agree with you. Baker Mayfield is only playing okay or mediocre football. But overall, the Browns were the better team coming into this. Phillip Rivers just looks done. Phillip Rivers, I don't know if he's going to live through this contract with the Colts. The Colts might be done with him just after this year. Only a 2-year contract, but he throws way too many picks. He forces the ball. It's awful. It's really awful to watch. Like, I was watching this game, it was really frustrating because I'm a Jonathan Taylor fantasy owner, and I just want them to rush. I'm like watching them force the ball to not open receivers instead of running when they have plenty of time left. It made me so angry.
This roster is actually pretty darn good. They are too good to have a player like Phillip Rivers just killing them.
Really is that too, though. They have their pass defense is number 1 in the league. They have really good defense going on, and then their offensive line is really good. I mean, there were Sans, Anthony Costanzo, and then they were out Darius Leonard that game, but still, it's just like overall, they have T.Y. Hilton as a wide receiver still. Like, they really have good players everywhere. They really are just underperforming.
Mark my words, at some point this year, Rivers is going to be benched for Jacoby Brissett.
I would be about it. I am such a big Brissett fan.
The thing is he's not going to turn it over like Rivers does, and that is good enough for this team, I think, right now anyways.
Me too. I feel like they should just go to the checkdowns. I don't know why, after a year where Phillip Rivers was most effective throwing to his running backs, why he's not throwing to Nyheim Hines. Like, that worked really well in Game 1. I don't know why they've gotten away from it, if teams are shutting it down or what.
What's nuts is that Rivers is finally, I mean, besides Sunday, he's being protected more now than he ever has been. He only got sacked. He's only been sacked 4 times this year. Like, isn't that wild?
It is wild. Like that to me tells me, this is not this might not be an accurate conclusion, but he's not being under pressure as much, is what that tells me.
That's absolutely
that might not be
true. No, it is absolutely true because the Colts' offensive line is much better than the Chargers' offensive line than it really ever was. The problem is that once he got a little bit of pressure in Week 1 and a little bit on Sunday, he starts thinking that there's pressure when there isn't really any there. It's kind of the same thing that Baker Mayfield is struggling with, and then all of a sudden his mechanics go all wonky.
Yeah. It's really, really bad. And that's why I think that you're right. Like, there were questions. I mean, Reich fielded questions about benching Phillip Rivers this week and said, no, we're not going to do that. It's a valid question at this point. When you're paying Jacoby Brissett as much as you are, and Phillip Rivers is not performing, like, it's not, you're paying 2 quarterbacks right now pretty good money. It's not like the worst thing in the world. It might literally win you games, and you should probably do it early.
I skipped a game here, Dolphins at 49ers. This is probably the most surprising result of the season for me right now. Maybe it shouldn't be because the Niners had huge questions at quarterback. Jimmy G clearly came back too early from injury. C.J. Beathard wasn't good. Nick Mullins wasn't good before him. And Ryan Fitzpatrick was dealing. He had another fantastic game. So the Dolphins just feel, after I felt like they were the bad version of the Dolphins from last year, they have quickly become the good version of last year's Dolphins again. So last year's Dolphins and this year's Dolphins are pretty much the same team still.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with you. This game threw me for a loop. When I saw it was 21-3 early on, I was just like, what is happening? I was shell-shocked by what was happening in this game. I kept coming back, and the Dolphins were scoring more. I couldn't believe that the Dolphins were able to put up 40 points with what they have. I was bewildered, shocked, confused, and then I was like, wow, injuries have really screwed up the 49ers. And Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing really, really well. Tua is going to ride the bench this entire season, which I think is a fantastic thing. I think that's awesome. I'm being serious. That's not sarcastic.
You mean because you don't like him or because of his hip injury?
I just think that I don't like where the NFL has gone, where it's like, you, as a rookie, you need to produce immediately. You need to get on the field immediately or you're useless, especially with the quarterback position. I mean, you look at, like, Terry Bradshaw, right? And Terry Bradshaw sucked. If he was in today's NFL, he would have been cut before he would have turned into the Terry Bradshaw we know. It's just how it would have worked. It's like, well, you're trash. It's time to move on. Like, that's how today's NFL works. Like, Josh Rosen got about, 10 games, and they're like, yeah, nope, trash. And then now he's just chilling on a practice squad. So I like Tua sitting, developing, coming back, especially coming back from injury, and then learning the offense first and giving him a better chance to succeed. And I know that it doesn't always matter. We're seeing Justin Herbert break out before our eyes, and he was a very early draft pick, and he is dealing. He's the first rookie quarterback to throw 4 touchdowns on Monday Night Football. That stat was really odd to me. It's like, I felt like that's had that happen before, but it has not. Back to my point is, I like letting a quarterback develop. It's just how I view it. I don't like seeing immediate playing time, such a valuable position, especially in a bad situation. And the Dolphins aren't last year's Dolphins. They are much better on both facets of the game, in both offense and defense, but it's still not where it's going to be next year when the Dolphins get 2 more first-round picks and 2 more second-round picks.
So what's your response to people who are saying, well, what about Justin Herbert and what about Joe Burrow, who's in a worse situation right now, who is still playing relatively well, all things considered?
My response is that it's a case-by-case basis and that they didn't have a scary injury coming out like Tua did. I won't lie to you. Even if Tua didn't have that injury, I'd still be saying I'd still be liking where he is right now, just sitting, learning behind Ryan Fitzpatrick, one of the smartest guys in the league. But, like, with the hip injury considered, like, I just really don't like the idea, too, of starting this year.
Understood. I appreciate and respect that.
And I
that
raised the
decision.
Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry. There's why I raised you the Patrick Mahomes who got to start one game in his rookie year.
There's good arguments for both sides, I think. And like you said, it's a case-by-case basis. So I think that's the easiest and truest way to answer that question.
Yeah.
So we already talked about the Dak Prescott injury. That meant that Andy Dalton was coming off the bench. Yeah, remember that guy? And he led the Cowboys to the game-winning score that gave the Cowboys their second win of the year and vaulted them into first place of the NFC East. By the way, I don't know if you know this, so you know how the Rams are 4-1? I'm going to give you a little bit of context to their record. Are you ready?
The Rams?
The Rams. I know it's a little unrelated, but you'll see why. The Rams are 4-1 this year, right?
Yes.
They're 4-0 against the NFC East. Now, how do you think about them?
They really got to start the first 4 weeks all against the NFC East?
Yep.
That's wild to me. That seems so weird. They must play like all their division games in a row.
I'll pull up their schedule. But isn't that nuts? Like, they had the loss to Buffalo, and they sandwiched it in between 4 games against the NFC East.
They literally have to. I forgot they played Buffalo too. They literally basically had to play their entire division like in a row. There's only 3 games. I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. There's only a few games breaking up those games against their own division. But that's wild. I still feel okay with the Rams. I think the Rams have been playing decent. I mean, they blew out Washington 30-10, so they're doing what they should be doing.
I just wanted to throw that out there, but anyways. Where do you think the Cowboys are with Andy Dalton? I still think that unless if Carson Wentz continues to play the way he did and they get healthy, I think this is the Cowboys division, even with Dalton. I think he's the best backup quarterback in the league.
Dude, I have no idea where this division is going. This division sucks. I want to be in this division.
I think it could have a 6-win team win the division. I really think that.
Say that again? Who could have a 6-win team?
I think we could really have a 6-win division winner this year.
It's entirely possible. Every team is super weak in this division. I honestly, if someone from the future came and told me the Redskins made it to the playoffs, I would believe it.
Hey, there is no team by that name
the
anymore.
Washington football team. I'm sorry. It's just so. I see like that name in my head. But anyway, the football team. If someone says the football team made it to the playoffs, I'd say of course. There's several football teams, but no, that's yeah. Anyway, the Washington football team could win this division.
Yeah. But the Giants can't. Even in a division where there might be a 6-win division winner, the Giants have no chance.
I really feel like they still could.
They
could win all the rest of their division games. I could see them literally beating the Redskins twice, the Eagles twice.
There you go, saying that word again, man. Come on, man.
Huh?
So there you go, saying that word again.
Oh, football team. The Washington football team,
No.
the Washington football team, the Washington football team. I'm going to write it on the board like 10 times over.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I think that the Giants have been. I think if it weren't for the Jets, I think there would be so much more teeing off on the Giants. I think.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like when Sterling Shepard gets back, there'll be a little bit of a better team.
Fair enough. The Vikings and Seahawks. The Seahawks were getting the doors blown off early, then they immediately erased the deficit. And a very entertaining end to the game where the Vikings had a chance to win it or kick a field goal to make it an 8-point game. They decided to go for the win. The Seahawks get the stop, and then Russell Wilson drives them down the field and is basically like DK Metcalf, and I love that meme you had with that Tyler Lockett analogy, because I have Tyler Lockett in a different league, and I appreciated the pain where he's like, I don't want to play with you anymore, because he's just thrown to DK over and over again, and finally it was enough, and the Vikings fall to 1-4, and the Seahawks remain unbeaten.
Yeah, I just like how the Seahawks never have a normal game. Like, it's just a meme that they don't have normal games. Like, it's just always like weird stuff has to happen. And just to add on to your point about the pain of Tyler Lockett, literally the Seahawks made it hard on themselves. Russell Wilson was like, I'm throwing to DK Metcalf. And then Tyler Lockett's but like, dude, I'm open. I'm open. He's like, Metcalf. Say it with me. Metcalf. Started Metcalf twice, and both times. Oh, granted, the second one was touchdown, so you can't complain if you're a Seahawks fan. You can't complain if you're the Seahawks. But Tyler Lockett on both those throws to Metcalf, where Metcalf was blanketed, Lockett was open. I'm literally looking at Lockett like he's got 2 steps on the guy this close to the end zone. Throw it to him. And on the other time, he's running He's running at the back of the end zone, open again, and then it's just like, let me throw to DK Metcalf on a very low percentage throw where he's being blanketed. Touchdown. But regardless, still, I was a salty salt ball.
A salty salt ball.
As a Tyler Lockett owner, and anyhow, there's no lead big enough for the Seahawks this year. They're going to be able to come back for it, kind of like last year's Chiefs. I am never going to rule the Seahawks out of a game until they're down 24 points in this second half. That's what it takes.
The Saints get a nice come-from-behind victory in overtime against the Chargers. Drew Brees finished with good numbers, but I thought he struggled a lot early. Give him credit. Poor Justin Herbert. He's playing his heart out, but still taking L's right now. But entertaining game. Emmanuel Sanders really broke out for the Saints in this one.
Yeah, that was actually a pretty solid game. 4 touchdowns for the rookie. That is really, really awesome. Just sucks. You think if he didn't lose Keenan Allen or had Austin Eckler, they'd probably win this game. Just having one more weapon, I think, would have made the difference. It just wasn't enough, which is unfortunate. The Saints don't look that strong this year. They really, really look like they're struggling, and they're relying heavily on Alvin Kamara. And Michael Thomas being suspended for this game for fighting with Gardner Johnson isn't good.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not good. He didn't do himself any favors, nor did he do his team any favors, so hopefully he shapens up. Last game of the week, this wrapped up just a couple hours ago. The Titans, as we were all expecting, because, why not? They blew the doors off the Bills 42-16 in a game that I don't think anybody saw coming.
I would have likely taken the Bills at any ridiculous covering number, and this was wild to me. I have no idea how the Bills fumbled the bag this bad. This was against a team that didn't practice, that didn't have all their players. Got, I think, 2 back. I think they got their long snapper and Tremont Jones. But, really, I have no idea what happened. Why the Bills were so underprepared for this game. Maybe it's because they didn't have any tape to watch on the Titans at any time recently. Even then, the Titans, on the flip side, again, didn't have time, didn't get to practice it on the practice field. They had to practice through Zoom. To me, this was wild. I can't believe that not only was this not a close game, this was a blowout by the Titans. Wild. A.J. Brown also awesome. I love A.J. Brown.
I think the Bills were rattled that they had to play on Tuesday. If I'm going to take a shot in the dark, I think that's the closest thing you can have to a legit explanation.
Yeah, and it doesn't get easier. The Bills go on to face the Chiefs, and the Chiefs had a long week off now. Get to see them be pretty rested, so it's going to be tough for the Bills next week, too.
But that wraps up our Week 5 slate of games. We'll be on to Week 6 now. Any closing thoughts now? There's no Thursday night football now because the Chiefs-Bills was supposed to be Thursday night, but now that's on Sunday.
Nothing. I don't got anything else to add.
Alrighty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions about the show, please feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. And check out our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can find our episodes posted on SoundCloud and YouTube. Austin, thanks for joining me again, buddy. And Steelers are 4-0. Be happy. Be healthy. Don't complain about the Steelers being 4-0. It hasn't happened since 1979. And we'll talk about 5-0. Maybe we'll have my friend John back on the show later in the week as we talk Steelers and Browns. So we have a lot to look forward to. I'm sure we'll only be talking about what happens on the field between the whistles and not after the whistles.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, let's really hope so this time. So until next time, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Have a terrific day and night wherever you are.
Bye.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.